Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are going to be continuing our journey to rank the top 30 players in the NBA. If you missed part 1 that we did on Monday, I recommend you go check that out. We ranked players number 30 to number 21. Today we're going to knock out the next 10 and take you through our numbers 20 to 11. But before we get into that, Logan, will you recap our last episode and read out the rankings that you had for numbers 30 to 21 for the people?
My pleasure. This could also be known as our journey to infuriate and piss off every basketball fan on the planet because our list seemed to be very divisive. But at number 30, I had Ja Morant. At number 29, I had De'Aaron Fox. At 28, I had Jalen Brown. At 27, I had Trae Young. At 26, I had Cade Cunningham. At 25, I had Darius Garland. 24, I had Jaren Jackson Jr. 23, Tyrese Haliburton. 22, Karl Anthony Towns. And at 21, Chet Holmgren.
At number 30, I had Jalen Williams. At 29, I had Domantas Sabonis. 28, Trae Young. 27, Cade Cunningham. 26, Jimmy Butler. 25, Cat. 24, Chet Holmgren. 23, Kyrie. 22, Darius Garland. And 21, Kristaps Porzingis. So as you can see, injured players are eligible for this list. We both made the decision to omit Joel Embiid because his injury problems have just transcended to a different level, and we talked about that on last episode. Logan said some truly hateful things about Joel Embiid towards the end. So again, if you want all of our explanations for the rankings that we've already knocked out, check that last episode. But with that, Logan, let's get into your number 20. Who do you have?
They could be described as hateful, or they could just be described
hateful.
As my truth. I was speaking my truth.
I don't think that there was much truth being said.
I was speaking truth to power, Carson. It's what we're about in 2025, man.
That was not truth.
In all seriousness, I do hope that Joel Embiid makes a full recovery, and I hope that I hope we haven't seen the last days of Joel Embiid playing basketball.
I don't know if I can even believe you.
That being said, I'm never gonna like the guy. Like I'm not gonna wish. I
wasn't trying to get us back on Embiid. I was not trying to get us back on Embiid.
All right. We are going to go and revisit a player that was discussed on our last pod and was in your 30 to 21 spots, and actually my first two players we actually discussed, so we won't spend too long on them. But at number 20, I have Kyrie Irving. I still think Kyrie is one of the best pure scorers in basketball, and that is why he ranks so highly for me. 25, 5, and 5 this year on 47, 40, 92, 59 splits. Good defensive player at this point in his career. I think he's improved as a playmaker, but it is his bucket getting that gets him on this list. He was the number 8 isolation scorer in basketball this season. He was the number 8 pick-and-roll ball handler scorer, and he was the number 6 spot-up scorer in the league. If you need a bucket, Kyrie Irving can get you one. He's just such a damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
One more such a. Give us one more such a.
He's such a special scorer, man. 68% in the restricted area. Good touch all around the court. He's shooting 50% from corner threes this season. He's a 44% catch and shooter on threes. Kyrie, the debate that we had last time was over a point guard like Tyrese Haliburton. I just prefer Kyrie's ability as a scorer to Tyrese's overall impact on offense. But we had that debate last episode if you really want to dive into that one. So Kyrie is at number 20 on my list.
Still one of the best scorers on the planet. I had him at number 23 because I do think he is one of the best shot makers ever. So effective both on and off ball. So he's really a dream offensive number 2. The reason I don't have him higher, I do think that there are guards with significantly more elite playmaking impacts. And then there are some other players in totally different archetypes who I think surpass Kyrie in terms of two-way impact. It's just that lack of real high-end playmaking. And then the fact that Kyrie still doesn't get that much of the easy stuff. Doesn't get a lot of shots at the rim, doesn't get many free throws, and so he is so dependent on his shot making where he is incredible, but there can be a little bit of inconsistency, and you can't reach the real upper echelon efficiency when you do have that shot diet. I still think the guy is a phenomenal scorer and offensive player, so I do have him just a few spots lower than you. In my number 20 spot, I have a guy who you had At number 25, and we talked about that some last episode, but that's Jaren Jackson Jr., who obviously is an elite defender, has been for years, one of the best rim protectors in basketball, holds opposing players almost 14% below their average field goal percentage at the rim. That is an elite number, can really guard in space as well, very switchable. So one of the best defensive bigs, specifically as a power forward in basketball. Is he perfect defensively? No, he's not. He fouls too much. He's not a good drop defender. He's not a great post defender. He's not a good rebounder. So that is why I do specifically say he's at his best defensively as your power forward. You want to pair him with a center who can pick up the slack in some of those big body, true five-man categories defensively where Triple J isn't at his best. But he is so great protecting the rim. He does have such unique athleticism and versatility that he is a top 10 defender to me for sure, but he's not one of those absolute top tier, top 3 to 5 kind of guys. But where he has taken a significant leap is as a scorer. Jaren Jackson Jr., who for years was a pretty frustrating offensive player in my opinion because he had so much ability, but he was so inconsistent, he has become an elite scorer of the basketball. Per 36 minutes, he gives you 28 points on 60% true shooting. He has been one of the premier walking mismatches as a scorer in basketball this year. Super efficient on post-ups, super efficient in isolations. He's big, he's strong, bruising, physical guy, handles really well for his size, and his superpower to pair with that is his elite touch. And also his one-of-one ambidexterity as a finisher. This is the guy with the best combination of finishing with the right and the left equally effectively, basically, in basketball. He shoots 59% on runners, 51% on hooks. So the touch shot making with that size and strength and skill, it's overwhelming. And he gets to the line at a really high rate as well. So there are very, very few players in basketball who can do anything with Triple J in single coverage, and he's shooting better than 36% from deep. He's an effective spot-up player. So as a scorer, one of the best bigs in basketball, and he's grown into the offensive player that I always hoped he could be, but I didn't expect him to get this good offensively. Like, this has really been a phenomenal season from him as a scorer, and you look at the results that he's led Memphis' offense to when he's on the floor without Ja. They have a 120 offensive rating, and they're a +7 net team, and he has led them to be well above 500 in games that Ja misses entirely. Like, he has clearly been the Grizzlies' most valuable player this season. He should be All-NBA. He's having a spectacular regular season with that scoring and defensive value both being so elite. I do have one major concern for Triple J come playoffs, and that is his passing. I mentioned this number last episode, but Triple J is a super efficient scorer out of the post, but when you send a hard double his way, he creates 0th percentile offense. The Grizzlies average about 0.43 points per possession when you send a hard double at Triple J out of the post. He turns the ball over way too much. His passing vision is bad. His passing accuracy is bad. And that's what is going to be tested in the playoffs. Teams are going to send doubles at him, and I just worry that he could be overwhelmed and less effective in that situation. Still, the reason that I have him above Kristaps Porzingis, Chet Holmgren, a couple of bigs who I absolutely love, but who you had higher than Triple J, is that I actually think he's a better scorer than KP just because he has so much more ability to self-create offense. KP is so efficient at the touches that he gets within the flow of the game, if that's as a popper, as a spot-up player, or selectively attacking mismatches out of the post. But Triple J can really initiate for himself and still be super efficient. And I do think he's a better defender than KP. Chet's a better defender than Triple J, but Triple J right now is a significantly better scorer with his physical imposition, with that reliable touch in the lane, just totally different tiers as mismatch attackers, and he's drawing a totally different level of defensive attention with his scoring threat. Like, Chet may end up being more efficient in a playoff series, but Triple J might be the opposing defense's #1 priority that they're trying to stop and take away offensively. That will never be the case for Chet. So I do think that scoring ability combined with that elite defense makes him a top 20 guy, but I can't have him higher than this because I do still have that red flag with his passing. And I do think there's always the dilemma of you want him to be your 4 defensively, but your 5 offensively. And there's a little bit of clunkiness there in terms of team building that I do think has to be considered. There are other guys who it's a little bit more seamless to put the ideal team around them.
I really do think Jaren's grown as a scorer this year, and I'm excited to see him in the playoffs again because the big difference from the last time we saw him in the playoffs against the Lakers, I think, is just his aggressiveness and confidence as a scorer. Like, Triple J against the Lakers, and it wasn't the entirety of the series, and that's what would be so frustrating about Triple J is there'd be these moments where he picks his spots, and he might be the best player on the floor, and he's killing everybody, and then he just completely disappears. I don't think we're going to see a disappearing act like that ever again from Triple J, but there are a few more areas where I'm looking for him to really stamp himself as this caliber of player. One, as you mentioned, I think driving in the lane sometimes. He does have a really good handle for a big. I think he can get pickpocketed a little bit. He's gotten better there. I think he's got elite touch. I think he's an elite mismatch attacker. But I do worry about him in certain defensive matchups. Now, I don't know if he's going to run into anybody specifically, but like that Cavs game we saw against him and Allen and Mobley, that's a unique challenge where I think he struggles against that. He struggled a little bit against Domantas Sabonis the other night. So I think if Triple J can't – he's got phenomenal finesse, and that's where I think that he really is hard to stop. But if you have a guy that can physically match up with him and not let him get to those mismatches – I think he can struggle a little bit more, but he's grown significantly in that area. He's not a perfect offensive player, but I think in totality, this is about the right range. I do disagree. I'd rather have KP at this point, and I think that it's strange. And maybe I didn't rank this in the most logically consistent way, but I think I would rather have KP as like my number 2, but I think I'd rather have Triple J as my number 1. But I prefer KP's how elite KP is at his number 2 traits in comparison to where Triple J is as a number 1, if that makes sense.
I think Triple J is pretty elite at the same play finishing stuff that you're getting out of KP. Triple J is just being asked to do a lot more offensively because of his situation, and he's capable of doing more because of his ball handling, because of his ability in isolation.
I agree with that. I just think KP is a better post scorer. I think he's a much better and more reliable shooter of the basketball, and I really prefer the floor spacing. Like, I think there's a little bit more volatility in Triple J's game still, but I think that does come with the fact that he is being asked to do more. So there is a little bit of a balancing act going on there, but I think I marginally prefer KP right now. But it's super close between these guys. Speaking of which, I'm going to get this out of the way because we already talked about him as well.
Okay.
I have Porzingis in my number 19 spot, and we've talked about him in great lengths. One this season over the past couple of years, but also in last episode. Another great mismatch attacker, another monster scorer out of the post, a great rim protector. And like I just mentioned, he does so many just connective things that I really like out of my number 2 guy. Elite rim protection. You did a video, too. You guys can check it out, an abbreviated cut of what we talked about last episode on what makes KP so special on our socials, which you guys can check out. But it basically comes back to that between him and Triple J, is I just prefer KP's skill set as a number 2 to Triple J's as a number 1. But these guys are really, really close. And honestly, I could see a good playoff run or a really good playoff series from Triple J that may meaningfully move him for me, maybe above a guy like KP. And Triple J has dealt with some injuries, but they're nowhere near as a concern as it is with KP. And if you want to give Triple J the edge over KP for that, I would understand that as well.
I'm not factoring health into my list, so I do think that Triple J is just better than KP straight up. I think that KP has some A-plus traits. You mentioned the post scoring. You mentioned the ability to shoot the 3, particularly as a popper, but also as a spot-up guy, the rim protection. Like, he's A-plus in all those areas. I think that Triple J is an excellent scorer of the basketball, and if you put him in Boston in a situation where he was dealing with the same level of defensive attention that KP is, where you're that worried about the shooting all around him, where he is your second or third option as opposed to your leading scorer throughout the year as Triple J has been, I do think he'd be more efficient. And 28 points per 36 minutes, man, like, that is no joke. That is rare stuff to see from anybody, especially from a big. And Triple J's a monster. I have in my number 19 spot Damian Lillard, who I had a real debate over against Tyrese Haliburton, because that's who I have in my number 18 spot, spoiler. And we were talking with Mars, who we had on our show just a few weeks ago, about the best point guards in the Central Division. And I had Dame 1, Hallie 2 then. I flipped since then. And there are some real pros and cons. You flipped in the other direction. This is as close as any ranking was for me between these two guys. Dame is still an elite offensive player. He gives you 25, 5, and 7 on 62% true shooting. He's a 91st percentile pick and roll scorer. He's an efficient isolation scorer. He's an efficient spot up player. And obviously, his A-plus God tier trait is his three-point shooting ability, particularly his range. Just the fact that you can set a screen for this guy 40 feet out, and he is a legitimate threat to pull from 33 feet and be efficient from there. It's just so hard to guard that much space when a guy is stretching you that far out. Makes it easier for him to get to the rim. It makes it easier for him to create for others. And he still does get to the rim at a decent rate, not what it was a couple years ago, but gets to the line a ton at this point. And what's difficult for me is I'm reaching the point where I actually think that Dame would just look better in another situation. Like when he and Giannis got paired up, I thought this is going to be the best duo in basketball. This team could win a title with these two as the foundation. And the fit has just never gelled as I would have hoped. The Dame-Giannis pick and roll that I envisioned never materialized. They've never been able to capitalize on each other's A-plus trait. Giannis with his rim pressure, Dame with his ability to stretch defenses so far out with his shooting, as I hoped they could. Now, they're still a dominant duo, but not as much so as I expected. And if you look at the minutes when Dame is on the floor without Giannis, he is still giving you superstar production. Per 75 possessions, without Giannis on the floor, Dame gives you 31 points, 8.5 assists on 64% true shooting. That's a major scoring leap compared to the minutes that he shares with Giannis. More assists, more efficient as a scorer. And that's the struggle here. I think part of it is that Giannis just has the ball in his hands so much that Dame isn't going to have as many opportunities on ball to create, which is where he's at his best. But again, I don't think that they've ever really figured out how to complement each other as well as I would have hoped. And that's arguably a knock on the flexibility and the versatility of both of these players. Like, these are two guys who have so much ability, who have these skill sets that in theory could have been very complimentary, and that just never materialized. Dame still scares the shit out of me if I'm an opposing defense, though. And I know that he can walk into a playoff series and he can give me 30 plus efficiently because he was doing it last year. Like, he could give me 35 points, 8 assists a game, and just has that sort of special scoring ceiling. I compared him to Haliburton, though. And when we talked a few weeks ago, I said, I think that I'm going to give Dame the edge because of that elite scoring ability. With some more thought, I actually think that Hallie is just an easier guy to build an elite offense around at this stage. I just think he amplifies everybody around him so much. He's so great at pushing the pace in transition and getting easy offense. He's a significantly better passer. He's so efficient himself as a scorer, although he's not the scorer that Dame is. And I just feel like I have a little bit more flexibility with Hallie. Like, I think if I were to pair him with Giannis, they would be more complementary because of how effective Hallie is without the ball, because of his ability to push pace. There's just so many traits with him that work with absolutely anybody. I do feel like if you gave Dame the keys to his own team, he could still be a really good offensive number one. But Hallie just flat out is a great offensive number one. And maybe doesn't have eye-popping raw scoring numbers, but I'll get into his case in a minute. He is one of the best offensive players alive. And honestly, maybe the tiebreaker, Hallie is a neutral defender. Dame is a bad defender. And I do think that that is worth noting, even though these guys obviously are getting most of their value on the offensive end. So it's really, really close. I love the way Hallie plays basketball. the efficiency, the team results that he leads to are just absolutely phenomenal. So I ended up giving him the slight edge. I flipped.
I flipped too. I went with Damian Lillard, and it is that elite scoring.
Would you have Dame at number 19?
I have Dame at number 17, so I have him a few spots higher. And I think there's a very large gap between my 17th and 18th guys. So I do think there's a bit of a drop-off after I go through there. Well, I already spoiled it, too. I don't have Kawhi, so there's definitely going to be one that I think we're making up for. But that being said, I do agree with you that I don't think Giannis and Dame enhance each other to the best of their abilities. That being said, I don't know how much that speaks about Dame's game as it does Giannis's. Like, I feel like it equally speaks about them both. Giannis doesn't roll and set as many screens as I'd like for him and Dame. And while they could tap into that more, and while I don't think Dame necessarily enhances Giannis to a new level or Giannis enhances Dame to a new level, I do think they still enhance everybody around them to another level that doesn't, show up in the stat sheet. If it's Giannis creating an initial penetration, he kicks out to Dame, and then they close out on Dame, and Dame kicks it to another guy. That's not going to reflect that the Giannis and Dame two-man game manufactured that shot, but it did, right? It'll pop up as an assist for Dame, but it's not going to be, it's not like scoring with a pick and roll with both of these two where it's as obvious. But I still think Dame is a special scorer, and I think those numbers you're talking about with Giannis off the floor just encourage me more about Dame as a player right now in his career. I was really scared last season that we were about to see a really ugly downward spiral for Dame. He had a lot of life stuff going on, health, moving to a new city, family drama. Like, Dame had a lot on his plate last season. I think he settled more into Milwaukee. I think he settled more into this team, and I still think Dame's an offensive number one. And I'm not saying that Haliburton isn't. I wholeheartedly think Haliburton is as well. But the same dynamic that I mentioned with Kyrie about the scoring to an even more drastic extent with Dame. I still think Dame is that guy. I really highly value that elite shooting and floor spacing that he gives me, and the veteran poise. I still think Dame could be your number one in a playoff series offensively. And I really value that highly. So I've got Dame at 17, and like I said, I think there's a decent-sized gap between 18 and 17 for me.
Interesting. So we had the Kyrie versus Hallie debate last episode where you talked about preferring Kyrie's scoring, and I said that just is not equivalent to the playmaking gap, in my opinion. It's different with Dame because Dame is a level up from Kyrie as a scorer, just because he gets more of the easy stuff. He gets to the line so much more, for example. He does get to the rim more. Also, he is a better playmaker. Like, Dame absolutely is more capable of being that offensive number one who you put out there on the floor with shooters and a roll man, and he can make you a really good offense. That's not what Kyrie is meant to do. He's meant to be, again, like the elite number two. But you talk about the fit with Dame and Giannis. I just think, like, Hallie makes it work with anybody, man. And I know that we're now getting into hypotheticals, but if they were to be paired up, like, he'd be getting off the ball quicker. He'd be relocating so much. Like, I do think that he would enhance Giannis more, and he would be more efficient alongside Giannis. And I don't think that he would have that sort of difference in production where it's like Dame has to try to figure out, how can I, as a ball-dominant player, thrive alongside another ball-dominant player? Both of them are at
their best with the ball in their hands. And so that's
Hallie,
why it's not the most seamless fit. And Hallie can thrive doing whatever. He's a genius.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Hallie is also at his best with the ball in his hands, but he's also one of the best off-ball players in basketball. And he's just a brilliant offensive player. He had his slump early in the year when he was clearly hurt. His back was fucking with him. Since those first 15 games when he was struggling, so almost the last 50 games now, he's giving you 19.5 points, 9.2 assists per game on 65% true shooting. He's a 93rd percentile pick and roll creator. He's an 81st percentile isolation creator. He's an 85th percentile spot up player. And his elite shot making traits are so valuable. Like, this isn't a guy who gets a ton of rim pressure. This isn't a guy who gets very many free throws at all. But he's able to get into the lane a good bit, and when he's there, He shoots over 54% in the paint outside the restricted area. One of the best floaters in basketball. 47% for mid-range. One of the better mid-range shooters in basketball. 39% from three. Elite both as a pull-up shooter and off the catch. In fact, he's the most efficient pull-up shooter in basketball out of the 20 guys who attempt the most pull-up jumpers per game. And of course, all of his elite scoring efficiency and elite scoring traits is very much used to amplify his teammates because his passing is his best trait, and he is always going to leverage any attention that he draws as a scorer to create great shots for teammates. He's averaging 9 assists per game this year, and he does that while limiting mistakes better than anybody else. He only averages 1.7 turnovers per game. It's the fewest turnovers per game ever by a player averaging at least 9 assists per game. He is the best decision maker in basketball. He makes the right read every single time. He is always going to take what the defense gives him and make the most out of every advantage that he creates. So he is giving you elite efficiency on ball for himself and for his teammates. Doesn't take bad shots, doesn't turn the ball over, but still creates those really high value shots. And he's phenomenal off ball. He's the best hit-ahead passer in basketball, the best transition passer in basketball. So you're always going to get those easy transition opportunities with him as your point guard. And he's led to elite offensive results no matter who's out there with him on the floor, right? There are other guys where you question, okay, can they fit with everybody? Can they work with everybody? Tyrese Haliburton, over the last 2 years, when he's on the floor without Pascal Siakam, they have a 123 offensive rating. When he's on the floor without Miles Turner, they have a 120 offensive rating. When he's on the floor without Andrew Nembhard, they have a 123 offensive rating. But you put him with any of those guys, and he and Siakam have complementary skill sets. He and Turner have one of the most dynamic pick and pop games in basketball together. He can thrive with another dude who wants to have the ball in his hands some, like Nembhard. He and TJ McConnell can play together. And the Pacers have a 124 offensive rating in those minutes. That's a non-shooting ball-dominant point guard in TJ McConnell, and Hallie is still able to make such quick decisions, to do so much off-ball, to do so much in transition, that they lead to elite team offense together. That's just a very, very rare ability that he has. He is one of the best offensive engines in basketball, and he does it in a way that enhances everybody, that makes any situation better, and that the box score sells so short, in my opinion. He was leading a historic offense before they even traded for Siakam last year. He led the number one playoff offense last season. Indiana had a 120 offensive rating in the playoffs, and people continue to downplay him because he doesn't have the crazy box score production or because they don't like whatever aspect of his personality. I think he's just amazing. And I totally see a case for Dame over him. I literally made the case a few weeks ago where I was talking about Dame's elite scoring trait, the fact that at times you can limit Hallie's scoring volume. But even when you do limit his scoring volume, like, he's usually having an elite offensive impact because of all the passing and little things that he's doing and how he controls the game. Phenomenal offensive player. And like I said, more respectable defender than Dame. So I think he's a top 20 guy. I have him at number 18.
I mean, he's one of the game's great amplifiers, and I've always said that about Hallie, and that's why I love him. It's a really rare skill set that you see in the modern NBA, to be that unselfish, to make that many guys that much better. So we've already actually talked about all of my 20 through 17. At 20, I had Kyrie. At 19, I had KP. At 18, I have Jimmy Butler. At 17, I have Damian Lillard. So to revisit Jimmy real quick, because I think this is probably going to be my most contentious ranking when the graphic comes out, because a lot of people that watch the NBA like to go off box scores, and this isn't a box score argument. I mean, I literally think if we did all the counting numbers for everybody in my top 25, Jimmy Butler may have the most underwhelming,
the fewest points, rebounds, assists total, or he'd be one of the bottom for sure.
Yeah, one of the fewest counting numbers in totality. You're talking about the box score doing Haliburton a disservice. I think it does Jimmy Butler at this stage in his career a great disservice. Jimmy Butler can have a pronounced winning impact in basketball games where he scores 2 points. You know, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that the guy's going to put up a game where he puts up 2 points. Don't get me wrong. That's a negative, but Jimmy's always picked his spots. And I already know the negative arguments, right? Like, oh, he's tailed off. He's 35 now. He's not getting any younger. I understand that. I think when Jimmy needs to, this is a guy that is always going to crank up and scale better. Right? And it's a cliche, and we do that as a blanket statement for a lot of guys in the NBA, I think. For a lot of sports players in general, we just give them the moniker of playoff riser. But with Jimmy Butler, I do feel it's different. And I feel a year off where he was injured let a lot of people forget about Jimmy. And I'm not going to do it. I've always been a Jimmy defender. I'm going to be a Jimmy defender until the day I die. I love Jimmy. I love the ferocity and the heart and soul that he plays with. This guy plays with a chip on his shoulder. You know, he's never been the most talented. He's never been the most skilled, but he's a cerebral basketball player that impacts the game and winning in every single way. Defensively, he's one of the smartest guys on the planet. Him and Draymond are a formidable defensive duo. Offensively, he does a bunch of little stuff that doesn't get in the box score. If he's setting screens, if he's cutting, if he's just playing within the flow of the offense. I think Jimmy is a plug-and-play guy where at this point in his career, he's not an ideal number one. And I have said that in the past. I don't know if he's a number one, but he is a bomb-ass number two. I mean, probably the GOAT. I don't know how many better number twos that you could come up with. And he so seamlessly fits in with Steph and Dre. I thought for the longest time that Markkanen was the best guy they could have got. I really do feel like Jimmy is the perfect connecting glue guy. He's still a really good isolation scorer when he needs to be. He's still a good post scorer when he needs to be. He's still a good transition scorer when he needs to be. It's all about picking his spots, and so I'm not going to make a box score argument for Jimmy. This is, I think, the respect that he has earned over this last decade of basketball that he's played. I think he has earned this reputation, and I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong in the playoffs. Whether the Warriors get bounced in the first round, whether the Warriors go on a little bit of a run, I think Jimmy is going to elevate his game the way he always does and play better than he does in the regular season and impact the game in every facet as a scorer, as a rebounder, as a playmaker, and as a defender. It's like when we talk about, baseball, that cliche, he's a five-tool player. Jimmy Butler is a five-tool guy. The guy impacts the game in every single way. I really value that really highly. But I do prefer other guys. Everybody above him is a way more polished offensive player or just a more impactful player on both ends of the floor in totality. And so that's where I draw the line. That's why I prefer Dame. I just would rather have that offensive number one at this point. But I still have such an immense amount of respect for Jimmy. And like I said, I think he's going to make a lot of people eat their words. Jimmy Butler is in no way washed.
He is absolutely not. I love Jimmy. He has been a home run for the Warriors. He's completely changed their season. They went from a mediocre team before they added him to one of the best teams in basketball, which is what they've been since they got him. They've lost twice in the 17 games that he's played for them. He is a winner through and through. He is the ideal connective star, guy who's going to do all the little things, screen, be an elite offensive rebounding wing, make decisions off the short roll for you, just consistently make the extra pass to find the open man, defend at a high level. And he's going to pick his spots. He's not going to give you a ton of volume as a scorer, but he'll be efficient as a scorer, gets to the line a ton. I love the guy. We talked about this already. I had him at number 26. You have him up here. Your ranking to me is just an indication that you're more bullish on his ability to turn back the clock and really ramp up his volume as a scorer come playoffs. Because I think that we agree on all of the winning things that he does. I am just trying to find the balance between appreciating all of that, valuing all of that, and then also acknowledging there are nights where he does have 6 points. Like that's happened 3 times already with the Warriors. There are nights where he is a no-show as a scorer. And yes, he still has an impact on those games, but it is not to the level of these guys who are elite offensive players, offensive number ones, or who are just absolutely dominant defensive players with some of these bigs, and then are also really high-end offensive players. Jimmy has a little bit more of that potential to fade, and so that's where I land a little bit lower. But I do think that he's phenomenal, and I mean, if he does get to the place where he's giving you 22, 23 points per game in the playoffs, then he has to be this high. I just think it's probably going to be more like 18, 19, and I still want that guy on my team every single day of the week. He is doing so much good stuff. But there are guys who just have more A-plus insane traits at this point.
Fade is not a word I would use with Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this already. but there have just been moments and there have been games where you just wonder if he has that gear. But he's been super efficient as an on-ball scorer. I think the guy's great. I do.
I mean, and I might be the highest on Jimmy Butler of anybody in basketball. I've always been a Jimmy defender. Jimmy's been my guy, and I'm going to go to bat for him. And it's ironic, too, because you're mentioning the scoring performances. Steph has been so damn good and so much better since Jimmy got there. He may not even need to do all that. You know, like it could just be like garnish. It could be a cherry on top, you know, if he is scoring at that level. So they might not even need it in the playoffs. That being said, I think he's a playoff riser. I think this is a guy that's going to get back, not to 2 years ago, not to, you know, a finals kind of Jimmy run, but I think he's going to get to a higher level.
I do think there are a couple areas in which he will become more assertive in the playoffs. Like, I think right now he is really focusing on like being the most selfless team player that he can be. Like at times passing up shots that he just should take to try to get somebody else a shot. I think that balance will shift a bit in the playoffs, and he'll take the ball into his own hands a bit more, and he'll say, yeah, I'm still going to do all the connective stuff, but also like I'm going to be Jimmy Butler. I'm going to go and try to be a more consistent, legit number 2 scorer for us. So I love Jimmy. I think you are very, very high on him, but like I don't think that this is crazy. I think that he definitely could justify this. We'll see. To me, it comes down to what level of scorer he is in the playoffs, basically. In my number 17 spot, I have Devin Booker. I've always been a Book guy. It's a little bit of a bummer to see him a few spots lower, but I think there are some people who might try to put him lower than this, which to me would be unfair because the Suns are not a good basketball team, but the reason for that is everything other than Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Like, are they an ideal fit as a duo? No. But are they still absolutely two guys who are playing, one at a top 10 level, one at arguably a top 15 level, undeniably a top 20 level in Devin Booker? Yeah, they've actually been a good team when those two play together. They're like well above 500 in games that KD and Book both play. They've just put a catastrophic supporting cast on both sides of the ball alongside them. But Book is still giving you Devin Booker production this year, averaging 26, 4, and 7 on over 59% true shooting. He is one of the best shot makers on the planet. He hasn't had his best three-point shooting season, and he was on a bit of a slump there earlier in the year, but he's 51% from mid-range. That is just so absurdly valuable, and you look at his efficiency in all of the on-ball play types. He's a 77th percentile pick and roll creator. He's a 98th percentile isolation creator. He's a 94th percentile post scorer, has always been one of the best post scoring guards in basketball. Such a good shot maker, uses his size there, such a deep bag, the footwork. It's incredible. And he's one of the best off ball scorers in basketball. So he has this just like elite top tier shot making from everywhere on the floor. Then he also gets to the line 7 times a game, even though he doesn't get to the rim much. Very crafty as a foul drawer. He's a low turnover guy. As a scorer, as a guy who can fit alongside another offensive star, I do think that Book is one of the best in basketball. The challenge with him is offensively, is he a real number one? He's not a high-end advantage creator. His rim pressure is minimal at this point. Like, that's never been his strength, but it's just continued to go down and down, and now we're at the point where he's well outside the top 50 in restricted area makes among guards.
I agree with that fundamentally. The one thing I will still give Book props for is he still does get to the line a decent
100%.
amount.
He absolutely does, but I'm just talking about that ability to athletically pressure the rim both for yourself and to create opportunities for teammates.
Just 18% of his shots come at the rim.
Very, very low. And that does make him susceptible to some of the little slumps in terms of efficiency like he did have earlier in the year. I do think that because he gets to the line so much and because he is such an insane shot maker, he is normally still pretty consistent. He does tend to have a relatively high floor as a scorer, but you saw that slump. You do see the disadvantage that it is to not get that super easy stuff consistently. And this year, he's been bad defensively, which I don't think is characteristic of who he is as a defender. I think he's fine. This year he's been bad. I don't blame him. He's in fucking Guantanamo Bay. He is in basketball hell right now. So this feels right for Book. Like, I love his scoring. I love his offensive fit basically anywhere. The dudes above him basically just have more superpowers. Like, they are truer offensive number ones who can create easy offense for teammates, who get to the rim more, or who just control the game more than Book, or they're like elite two-way dudes. Book, to me, hasn't gotten any worse. It's more just the guys around him have gotten better, is what I would say. So this is why I have him at number 17.
This is going to flow nicely because I have Book at number 16. I have more to say about Book, but real quick, can I ask you a question?
Please.
So have you finally moved on to the dark side? Are you with me that Donovan Mitchell is better than Devin Booker?
I mean, it's actually still quite close.
I have them right next to each other still. I have Mitch at 15. I got Book at 16.
Yeah. What I would say is I think that Mitchell has actually gotten better off ball, and I think that he's shown a really impressive ability to play alongside a guy like Garland and to have them both thrive that I wasn't as confident in a year ago or 2 years ago with him. I still think that Book is the better off-ball scorer. I still think that he is such a great complement to so many different stars because of that. But then Mitchell also has that scoring ceiling of Game 7 against Orlando last year and Game 6, where it's just like, okay, I'm going to get to the rim whenever I want if that's cool, and I'm going to make 40% of my pull-up threes on high volume. And, like, there's just an advantage creation there that Book doesn't quite have. And with Book's issues defensively this year, I'm giving Mitchell the slight edge. So I have flipped on that, but it's still close for me. Like, it's still very, very close. And honestly, dependent on situation. I would say that there are situations in which I'd probably still rather have Book, but Mitchell's scoring ceiling is really, really high.
That's fair. I've always been a Mitchell guy just because of the athletic imposition and the rim pressure. But in the big argument I always think for Devin Booker has been that malleability and portability depending on situation. But I think Mitchell has closed that gap enough this season where it is definitive to me. With Book, though, you're still getting an elite scorer on ball and off ball. He's the number 7 isolation scorer in basketball. He shoots 49% in the mid-range. For a guy that takes this many shots, that is an unreal number. He shoots 66% at the rim despite not getting there a ton, so he's still a good finisher. And he has been less efficient than seasons previous. The things that I will say about that is I think Book lives on an inherently difficult shot diet, so it's always going to be volatile, but also because you're talking about the situation, of course defenses are going to divert more defensive attention to him. I think that's a component of it as well. When you're running out with lineups with not offensive zeros, but like just think about it strategically. You're playing against a team with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Sometimes I'm going to send 2 to one of those guys, and it might make them a little less efficient. But the one area where I really do want to give Book props, because you're talking about him being a number 1 or a number 2, I really do think he's improved as a playmaker over the past 2 seasons. He's way more methodical than he's ever been before. And Book's always been a process guy, but I think he's at his best now. Not at his best, but he's the best he's ever been at weaponizing his threat of scoring, where I think he's got better court vision. I think he's a real deceptive passer now where he's not telegraphing looks. He was, confusing the defense and freezing them for a second. He's not a high-end advantage creator, and I think that's what ultimately limits his ceiling as a playmaker. But I think he's improved there. I think he's the best he's ever been there. And I think he could get even better. Is he going to create the most valuable shots, the easiest looks for his teammates? No, we've established that, but I think he could even get better there, and I think he's really, especially over the past 2 years being paired up with KD, leaned into his playmaking more, and I do want to give him props for that.
I want to have Book higher than this, man. I do love Devin Booker, and when I think about his playoff resume over the last couple years, sure, it's only 15 games, and a lot of this is because of the unreal pull-up shooting run that he was on in the 2023 playoffs, but he's 32 points per game, 7 assists on 68% true shooting. Now, the Timberwolves series last year, did show you the sort of matchup in which Book can be overwhelmed physically and athletically in a way that you cannot do to Donovan Mitchell. That's where you're talking about the difference that those high-end athletic traits, first step, the ability to get by people, makes a difference. Timberwolves just bought insane ball pressure, and they were kind of able to bully Book. And the first 3 games were really rough. He ended up going off in the 4th game. So, like, his numbers from the series still look pretty good. That's not how that series felt because the first 3 games were rough. But I'm glad you mentioned the playmaking, too, because I think Book's been underrated there for years. I remember the Nuggets series in 2023. Not only was he insane as a scorer, he was just dotting them up with skip passes when they're bringing Jokic up to the level, and like he's consistently finding that weak side shooter in the corner. He's a phenomenal offensive player. He is. The league is just stacked with talent. I do think that you said it well. Mitchell has improved enough off ball to where he has the slight edge there now because of his high-end physical athletic gifts, but it is really close. I mean, this whole kind of range for me of 13 to 17, like all of these dudes are decently close. In my number 16 spot, I have a guy who you do not have on your list. This is where I have Kawhi Leonard. This is where I land on him, and I know that you say that you're out on him because of the injuries and whatnot, but again, if you are healthy enough and playing basketball right now to the point where I can evaluate you, I'm going to have you on this list because I'm not factoring in health. The exception is Embiid because they're considering medical retirement. He was playing bad basketball when he was healthy this year. He's in a class of his own. Even though Kawhi has consistently broken down in the playoffs, he's healthy right now, and so I'm going to rank him. This is where I feel comfortable landing with him, sort of balancing out who I think Kawhi is based on what we've seen from him over the years versus what his production and performance has been this year, because he had a relatively rough stretch coming back from injury, but now he's starting to look like really, really scary Kawhi again. His last 4 games, he's averaging 27.5 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists on 69% true shooting. Just had an incredible performance against the Cavs. And the reality is that, like, when his jumper is falling at an elite rate, he is a force to be reckoned with still.
I mean, he's unstoppable.
He is. And that's the thing. Like, he was basically just cold as a jump shooter when his efficiency was not there. And now that shot is falling in the way that we expect from Kawhi. And it's like, all right, he's an elite pull-up shooter from the mid-range. He's an elite 3-point shooter as a pull-up guy and off the catch. And when we do talk about how you expect guys to perform in the playoffs, if their bodies can hold up, which is a bigger question for Kawhi than anybody else who we'll talk about. But when he has been healthy in the playoffs, he's been one of the great scorers we've ever seen, because all of his traits that define his scoring game scale to the postseason at an A+ level. He has elite strength. So when the game gets more physical, when you're going up against elite defenses, nobody can move him off his spots. He's an elite ball handler. Nobody can speed him up. The ability to dominate that intermediate area where teams may load up on downhill guards on their drives and they may take away the rim. And if you are a guy who's really relying on the 3 ball, well, it may be that in late April or in May, like, your legs leave you or you just go cold and the 3 ball isn't there and you're relying on it and it leaves you, and now you've taken a real hit as a scorer. If you can kill people from the mid-range, from in the paint, outside the restricted area, you're always going to be money in the playoffs. That's why Jokic gets better in the playoffs as a scorer. That's why I think Shea, as incredible as he is, will be as good, if not better, as a playoff scorer. And Kawhi epitomizes that. Like, playoff Kawhi from 2019 to 2023 was a 39, 4.5 guy on 63% true shooting. That's in 50 games. I'm bringing that up not to say that he's going to give you that production in 2025. Obviously, Kawhi is not the player that he was even in 2023, but just to give evidence to the fact that he has consistently gotten better in the playoffs when he is healthy. And I mentioned these last 4 games that he's like really been playing some elite basketball, but if you just look at his last 12 games, which is when he really got off his minutes restriction, started playing 30 plus minutes consistently, he's giving you 24 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, 2.3 steals per game on 58% true shooting. Like, that's really good wing production. Is that peak Kawhi? No, but is that alone? Like, about the 16th player in basketball? I would say so, especially when you consider he's still a clear plus defender on the wings. Not what he was a few years ago, but like he's just been snatching the ball from people lately. He still has an ability to be that really high-level perimeter defender. The reason that I don't have him higher than this, he has taken a step back in a couple ways. His rim pressure is not what it was even last year when I thought Kawhi was still playing like a top 7 guy when he was healthy. He's not getting to the line much at all. He's taking under 3 free throw attempts per game. I think he's lost a little something in terms of his first step, and so that puts more pressure on his shot making. And that's where you see some of that scoring volatility, as great as he is as a shot maker, because he was cold for a bit, and then again, the efficiency wasn't quite there. The production wasn't quite there. I do think because he's such a great shot maker, like I'm going to bet on him being really damn good as a scorer in the postseason down the stretch of this season. But a lot of his value is coming from his scoring right now. He hasn't been great as a playmaker. He's not an elite defender anymore. So I'm going to settle on him here because I think to have him higher, I would need to see him at this level for a longer period of time. I would need to see some more consistency. But does he still have the potential to be a top 12 guy, a top 13 guy? Absolutely. Because that scoring is an elite trait, even with some of the regression in terms of getting the easy stuff. Just that strength, that handle, the pace that he plays at, the shot making, it works. It works so damn effectively, and that's why I still have to have him, not just on my list, but almost in my top 15.
It's really rational. Kawhi is just such a veteran player at this point, man. Like, he's so smart. Like, I love Kawhi. I love watching Kawhi. His run with the Raptors is one of my favorite in NBA history, the shot-making display he put on. And I still do think, man, I completely agree with you about the point in the playoffs that if he is available, he does things that you can't take away. That strength, the mid-range touch, the playmaking at this point in his career. I just know what's going to happen when we get to the playoffs. He's going to play in 1 or 2 games, then his knees are going to get inflamed. Kawhi, I'll give you my knees, bro. They're sturdy. You can have them.
Mine are not, but you can have them. You might dislocate your kneecap, so that would suck, but you can have them, man.
If Kawhi
I would just
was
love
healthy,
to see one more healthy Kawhi run.
Right? That really feels what we
like,
when
dude,
looking
2023, he was
right?
wiping the floor with Kevin Durant for 2 games, and then bye-bye Kawhi.
I just wanted one with LA where they could at least tease us a little bit. You know what I mean? And I don't think we're ever going to get it. I think the most likely outcome when we get to the playoffs is Kawhi's going to play 1 or 2 games and he's going to be done the rest of the way, and it's going to end the same way that it always has. So Kawhi is not on my list. If he was, he would be somewhere between this 11 to 15 range. I'm pretty confident. Wow. 11 to 16. I do respect Book. Him and Book would be a convo for me.
When it comes to college basketball in March Mania, one thing is for sure. Nothing's for sure. Upsets, buzzer beaters, Cinderella's advancing, top seeds going home early. It's all going to happen. Bet the unexpected, every upset, every day with DraftKings Sportsbook.
With live betting, exclusive content, promos, and parlays, DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March. Ready to make your first bet? Check out the matchups and pick a team to win. It's that simple. And if it's your first time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly.
Bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
So that intrigues me because I think there's 2 players from the same team that we're going to have in this range. And I don't want to paint you in a corner arguing against your baby boy. I hope we don't come to that.
Oh, well. Whatever
because
happens, Logan.
I've got Donovan Mitchell at 15.
You've got Donovan Mitchell at 15.
Yeah.
So you have Evan Mobley higher than him.
I do.
Oh, I see. This is the dilemma that you were saying you wanted to avoid. I thought you were saying that maybe you were going to be arguing against my beloved Evan Mobley. So do you have Mobley 1 spot higher than Mitchell?
I do. I have Mitchell
Okay.
at 15. I have Mobley at 14.
So I have the inverse. I have Mitchell at 14 and I have Mobley at 15.
It's interesting with both of these guys because I would hear an argument out for either case, realistically. The reason I went with Mobley is because in a lot of ways I think they are. It's so strange how the Cavs built this roster and why I didn't have faith in it for so long, and like it works now. Like, I don't know how Jared Allen is like the number 2 to Mobley, Garland's the number 2 to Mitchell, but it's like both of these guys would be great if they were on their own in individual situations because they're just great basketball players. I just think Mobley has gotten to the level of a defensive player that I just have to respect like him in totality. And the most staggering number I came across, Carson, for years after they handed out that Jared Allen contract, you and I came on here at least annually. Once a year, we came on here and said, explore trading Jared Allen, move Mobley to the 5, let's get this thing ironed out. Ironically, Jared Allen has become a good enough offensive player, and Mobley's become a good enough offensive player that it really works in a big way. And it's not only works, it's a superpower of the Cavs where I think in some of these hypothetical matchups you're looking at in the playoffs, deep in the playoffs, I think that they provide a really good counter to some of the duos they're going to run into. If it's Boston and they've got to go up against the twin towers of Porzingis and Horford or whoever you've got down there, right? If it's Denver and you need a counter to throw at just Nikola Jokic, right, you have a potent combination. If it's Oklahoma City in the finals and you need to go up against Hartenstein and Holmgren, you have a really good counter. The reason I'm so confident in Mobley and why I think that Jared Allen could be expendable, I think the defense could be better if Mobley was a full-time 5. Again, I think it's a superpower and a strength of the Cavs that they have 2 guys that are this damn good and that can work together. The most confounding number I found, with Allen, no Mobley, the Cavs have a defensive rating of 113.2. With Mobley, no Allen, they have a defensive rating of 105.9. That's basically exclusively with Mobley at the 5 spot. He's number 21 in defensive field goal percentage inside 6 feet. He holds guys nearly 9% below their average inside there, and he's an elite perimeter defender as well on a lot of different guys. Now, I think speedy guys can kind of give him some issues, but, I mean, he can really defend anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's crazy is, I mean, Mobley is in the handful of best defenders on the planet right now, and he's a good offensive player. That's why he's so high, is I think you can very, very, very easily build an elite defense around him with the foundation of Evan Mobley, and he's a good offensive player that is growing. Carson, he's the number 2 cutter in basketball this season. He's averaging 1 point. Now, granted, the possessions aren't that high. It's minimum 1 per game, but he's averaging 1.5 points per cut. He's the number 15 roll man in basketball right now. Like a year ago, I think it would have been asinine to have Mobley there, and we saw the flashes. He gave us that hope in that series against Boston without Jaren Allen on the floor, and we saw the flashes. Mobley's put it together more this season. I think he's got more room to grow, but this ranking doesn't have anything to do with what else Evan Mobley could blossom into offensively. It has all to do with what he is already defensively, and I hate any time I have to put you in a position to argue against one of your guys, but I think Evan Mobley's the man. I think it's a toss-up on who you think Cleveland's best player is between Mitchell and Mobley. I think they're both elite at what they do. I just prefer the elite defensive floor that Evan Mobley provides.
Mobley is their best regular season player. Mitchell is their best playoff player, in my opinion. That's how I would put it, and I am going to slightly value who I want most in the postseason more. I want to touch on the point that you made about Jared Allen and Mobley and their fit together. It works so well at this point. Jared Allen is so good, and his contract is so team-friendly.
100p.
He's not going anywhere. But I still think Mobley is at his best at the 5. Now, he's such a freak talent. He's so insanely versatile defensively and offensively, especially now with his improved ability to shoot the 3, significantly improved ability, that he can be phenomenal as a power forward. But as a center, you mentioned how great the Cavs defense has been with him anchoring the 5, and offensively, he's significantly better. I mean, he's getting all the easy big man touches off the roll and in the dunker spot and cleaning up the offensive glass. He's got more space to attack mismatches. Like, It's just the reality. Any center is going to look better without another big on the floor offensively, but per 75 possessions without Jared Allen on the floor, Mobley is giving you 24, 12, and 4 on 67% true shooting. He's scoring a lot more. He's significantly more efficient. He's getting to the line twice as much.
You're getting me like hot and bothered over here, bro.
He's a freak, bro. He's an absolute monster. And, like, he's going to be a top 10 player very soon because he still has so much room to grow.
I just about popped one.
Brother, I'm right there with you. Every time we talk about him, there's a reason that I keep the camera above the waist. He's so good, and I do think that, yeah, he'd actually be at his best as the center, but again, he's also great as a power forward, and Jared Allen is awesome, and they've made this fit work in a way that they're going to win 68 games. So I don't think that we need to do a ton of problem solving with the Cavs right now. Per 36 minutes, Mobley's giving you 22, 11, and 4 on 64% true shooting. I should have also mentioned the Cavs' best net rating occurs when Mobley is on the floor without Jared Allen. They're better than plus 15 net teams. So that is when they're at their best, and that's when Mobley's at their best. But you can't overstate the value of having 48 minutes of great big play. Every minute that Mobley's off the floor, you're getting Jared Allen minutes and vice versa, and they can play together super well. Mobley is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He is an elite rim protector, not a tier 1 rim protector. He's not Chet. He's not Wemby. But he's just like one tier below that, where he is still one of the best in the league. And then his switchability to me is absolute top tier. I would say Bam is the only more switchable big in basketball today. Talked about last year in the playoffs, Mobley guarding Paolo Banchero and Jason Tatum for extended stretches and holding them both to like 35, under 40% shooting from the field. It's such a weapon when you have a guy who can guard on the perimeter like that, who can switch everything, and then who can also anchor the glass and be one of the best rim protectors in basketball. That's why they're such a great defense when he's on the floor without Jared Allen. And they're a really good defense when they're both on the floor, even though they don't have the best defensive personnel around them on the perimeter. So I think Mobley's a top 3 defender alive, but offensively, he is so uniquely skilled for his size as well. And he's grown so much. Kenny Atkinson totally empowered him to do more as a ball handler, to initiate more offense for them, pushing in transition, initiating actions from the top of the key, running handoffs through him, using his passing where he is very gifted and is one of the better passing bigs in basketball already. He's gotten better as a finisher around the rim. He's gotten more physical. He's gotten stronger. He's gotten more aggressive. He gets to the line more than he did previously. The mismatch attacking aspect of his game, his ability to size up a smaller player, get into the lane, remain patient with his footwork, throw an up fake, get to a touch shot, impose himself physically, like he's totally leveled up there. He's tripled his three-point volume and is shooting better than 36%. Is a legitimate spot-up guy for you now. Runs inverted pick and roll and can attack a mismatch, or he can play make for his teammates. Like, he's just so good at so much. He's so efficient. He's so dominant defensively. He's always going to have an impact on the glass, and he'll just kind of walk into like 17, 10, and 5 while being dominant defensively just about every game. So because he's so well-rounded, he has that elite impact night after night. He works in any situation, at the 4, at the 5. I just want the dude on my team as an all-NBA player, no matter what. The reason that at this point I still give Mitchell the edge is that even though I think when you look at the all-around impact, all the phases of the game, Mobley is more consistently impactful. When I think about what Donovan Mitchell can do offensively in a playoff series, I think about what he's done to Boston in their last 7 head-to-head meetings. That's the playoff series last year before Mitchell got hurt, and then their 4 meetings this year. He's giving the Celtics 34, 7, and 5 on 64% true shooting. That's one of the best defenses in basketball. He cuts through them like Swiss cheese. Just gets to the rim, gets by these elite point of attack defenders, kills them with the pull-up shooting. He's such a dominant pick and roll scorer, 90th percentile as a pick and roll creator. Just has this insane combination of elite ball handling and downhill quickness, and then his footwork in the lane. I mean, he just has such a deep bag with the inverted Euros and the windmill gathers. Like, he can just get you going any direction. And then the finishing is so good. He's been unreal on floaters, 54% this year. And he shoots 35% on pull-up threes, but we know he can just make them rain. He can hit 40% while he has this downhill threat. And I do think when he's insistent on getting to the rim is when he's at his best, and then when he pairs that with the pull-up shooting. And as we talked about, he's a really good spot-up player. He's grown off ball now. He's 42% on catch-and-shoot threes. That's why I give Mitchell the edge in a playoff series right now. I think Evan Mobley's offense is going to translate. Like, I think that his offensive production will be similar in the playoffs to what it has been in the regular season. Do I have a couple concerns? I mean, maybe if you have a guy who can really stack up with him physically, is he going to be super efficient in terms of self-created offense? If you are really closing out hard, does he maybe become tentative as a shooter? He's not a perfect offensive player for sure, and he'll continue to grow there, at which point he will surpass Mitchell as an all-around player. But it's just more about the fact that I think Mitchell can elevate in those environments, and I think he can take over and be the best offensive player in a series, and that's still the most valuable thing that you can be as a basketball player. There is a volatility with Mitchell, as good as he is. We've seen it in the playoffs. Last year, he was phenomenal, 30 points per game on 58% true shooting. But the two playoff runs before that, his first run in Cleveland and his last run in Utah, it was rough. He was giving you 24 points per game on 51% true shooting because he was ice cold as a pull-up shooter. The two runs before that, though, in Utah, he went absolutely crazy because he couldn't miss as a pull-up shooter. So, like, that's the thing. He takes a lot of pull-up threes. He's not an elite pull-up shooter, and so he can run hot and he can run cold. He can win you a game. He can win you a series, and he can shoot you out of a game. And that is one thing with Mitchell that I always worry about just a bit when it comes to crunch time. He can get in that mode where it's just, I'm jacking up pull-up threes down the stretch.
He can freeze out everybody else.
He can freeze out everybody else.
Last year against Orlando, I don't blame him at all because he was Superman. He put on his cape and dragged them across the finish line when they needed him. But I 100% agree with you. There's a good and a bad to it. There's a balance to be struck.
And the Cavs are too good to be freezing anybody else out. Garland is too good. Mobley is too good. You get DeAndre Hunter in a closing lineup. Like, they just play such beautiful collective offense that I don't want him trying to play hero ball. I think he's done a better job of not doing that this year. The Cavs have been an excellent clutch offense, but like, you can still see him get into that mindset from time to time. And I don't love that. But the offensive ability is just so insane. Like, the physical traits he has with the skill, that ability to just take over a playoff series. For me, he is still the number one for the Cavs for that reason, but it's incredibly close. I mean, I have these guys at number 14 and number 15 on my list.
We're talking about the volatility that comes with Donovan Mitchell. I don't think this guy has nearly as much volatility in my number 13 spot, and that's why he's here. I have Jalen Brunson in this spot, and I love Jalen Brunson. I've always loved Jalen Brunson. I think he plays such a beautiful style of basketball that you just can't take away. Like, I just get lost watching Jalen Brunson, how calm he is, how slow and methodical and deliberate he is, where he just makes it look so easy. And it's not an SGA easy, where the game really does come easy. Like, Brunson's so small, it's just remarkable that he's this good. He's so smart. He's so crafty. He's perfect for a playoff environment. And I'm trying to think about a negative argument that someone would make about Brunson, or like if they would criticize him for what he did in the playoffs last year. But I honestly think last year in the playoffs is a testament to how great Jalen Brunson is as your offensive number one. I get it wasn't the most efficient playoff run, but when you look at the offensive circumstances that he's dealing with non-shooters on the floor, with these packed paints and these packed lanes, and he's still producing over 30 points a game, I just think it speaks to the different environments that he can thrive in. And then you compare that in contrast to this season where he has Karl Anthony Towns and these other great offensive players around him, and it has become that much easier. I just think it speaks to Brunson's versatility and how he can thrive in any possible offensive environment. And that would be an argument that I would hear for Brunson being even higher on this list, because I just think he is a guy that you can't stop what he does for a team offense. He gets downhill. He gets into the teeth of the defense. He creates shots for his teammates. He can score anywhere inside the arc. And now he's an elite shooter. I mean, there's just nothing you can do with the guy. The most mind-boggling stat that I found about Brunson, because if there was anything that you were going to knock him for, it would be his off-ball scoring. He's been the number one spot-up scorer in basketball this year. 1.42 points per possession.
He might have been last year, too. I mean, I think he was at like 1.4 points per spot up last year, too. It's crazy. He doesn't do it a lot, but he is insanely efficient.
It's ridiculous. He's the number 9 pick-and-roll ball handling scorer in the NBA. He's the number 7 isolation scorer in basketball. And he's just one of these engines that, like, I don't know, like, that's where I wonder what people think about Brunson, because it's weird, right? He's in the Big Apple. He's in New York. He's got a lot of star status, but he still doesn't, in my opinion, have that name value of a Damian Lillard or something like that in this point of his career. And so I wonder where other people would rank him. But
I think he does now. I think a couple years in New York, he's earned that.
I hope so, because he's such a beast. There's nothing that you can do to really disrupt him or to really, eliminate him. Right? You can slow Brunson down a little bit. You can try to limit him, but there's no stopping Jalen Brunson. He's an elite scorer of the basketball. He's a great playmaker. Really, the only thing that keeps him from being higher on this list is two things for me. The ability to get all the way downhill and to get easy shots at the rim, and his defensive limitations. That's it.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I have no issues with Brunson in his game. I think he is one of the best offensive guards in basketball. That's why he's number 13 for me.
I have him in this exact same spot. He is just one of those guys who you expect to be the best offensive player in a whole lot of series. And same reason that I said that for now I would still take Mitchell over Mobley. It's very close. I kind of felt like if I were to have Mobley over Mitchell, maybe I wouldn't have had to have him over Brunson too, because I do think Brunson is an even better offensive player than Mitchell. But it felt like I sort of had to make a philosophical distinction, and
on the
archetype,
still think I get
it's crazy valuable when you're a guy who can go into a series and give the opposing team 35 with solid efficiency and create good shots for your teammates. And Jalen Brunson, we know is capable of that. He's having the best season of his career, 26 points, 7.5 assists per game on 61% true shooting. You mentioned his efficiency across play type. I don't know that anybody really matches it in totality. Shea is the guy who I would say, if you look at every single play type, you're like, oh my God, how is he so efficient in every one?
It's reminiscent of Kawhi from 2 or 3 years ago, where he was 80 or 90th percentile
crazy.
Every single one.
It's crazy. 88th percentile pick and roll efficiency, 87th percentile isolation efficiency, 98th percentile spot up efficiency, 80th percentile post up efficiency. He's one of those small guards. Certainly used it a lot at Villanova, but with his strength, with his bag, his footwork, his shot making, he can give certain dudes buckets even out of the post. It's just insane. And you mentioned the self-assured pace that he's always playing at, the methodical way that he approaches the game, never sped up, very low turnover player. You're not going to get him to make mistakes. And he is just an unbelievable shot maker. He's 54% on floaters, one of the best floaters in basketball. I feel like he and Garland are the two dudes who really make a case among guards for having the best floater in basketball right now. He's 46% for mid-range. We know the turnarounds that he can get to and the step backs that he can get to from there. And then he's over 38% from deep. Good pull-up shooter, great spot-up shooter. So there's so much to love about his game and his scoring and what he does for you offensively. And I like him even more when it gets to the playoffs. And that is an advantage that he has over Mitchell. Mitchell has a higher ceiling. He also has a significantly lower floor. We've talked about this before. But Brunson, with his strength, with his pace, with his insane intermediate shot making, which I mentioned earlier, gives you that really valuable full floor in the playoffs. Nobody can take that away. He's going to get his. Also, some of the craziest stamina as a scorer of anybody alive right now. His conditioning, his ability to just grind every possession, which he won't have to do in the same way this year that he had over the last couple years. But over those last two postseasons, he was giving you over 30 points per game in the playoffs on 56% true shooting. Now, that's not good efficiency, but when you consider the offensive situation he was in, the insane burden on him if it was Julius Randle melting down 2 years ago, or then him having to do it all without Randle last year, like Knicks around him just dropping like flies, such little offensive skill. He had to create every shot. And the fact that he was still able to produce with that volume with respectable efficiency and lead the Knicks to actually be a good team offense in the playoffs, like that was so impressive. And his three ball wasn't really on in either of those playoff runs, so he would have been more efficient if it had been. He's an elite offensive player. Now, is he the most portable? No, he's quite ball dominant, but I do think you mentioned he has the ability to be an extremely effective spot up player. We saw in Dallas him be a good off ball player. Like, I do think part of it is just he's so damn good that you want to give him the keys to your offense. And I think he's shown a little bit of flexibility in terms of how he's playing this year compared to last year with so much more offensive skill around him. There's almost nothing to criticize about his offensive game because even though he doesn't get to the rim a ton, he gets into the lane a lot. I think he's second in drives, only behind SGA, and he's got the floaters, and he gets to the line at a crazy rate because, no hate, he might be foul grifter supreme in the NBA right now, so he gets his 7+ free throws a night. Really, the only knock is he's really, really bad defensively. The worst defensive player we're going to talk about in this 11 to 20 range, one of the worst defensive players on this list in totality. Him and Dame actually are pretty similarly awful defensively, but that's why he's not higher. That's the only reason I have him at number 13, just like you.
On to number 12, I have a guy that I also flipped on from a conversation that we had earlier.
Interesting.
I have Zion Williamson here at number 12.
So do I.
Interesting. Zion is so ridiculous. I always, when I watch Zion now, I sit back and I wonder with how advanced he is with his playmaking now. And it's not, I don't mean advanced in the sense that it's like Harden or Luka or any like these elite playmakers in NBA history, but like Zion's pure understanding of how defenses are playing him and his decisions that he makes in anticipation. Like, don't get me wrong, he's good at collapsing the defense and kicking out, but he's also good at just recognizing when the defense is about to load up on him and passing out to another guy before that even happens preemptively to make a play happen. Like, Zion is the smartest that I've ever seen him as a basketball player. And, right, you'd hope so, right? As guys, it just naturally happens. As you gain more experience, you're going to get smarter about the game. I always sit back and wonder if he had the actual in-game experience, like how much further along he would be in his development. Because it's remarkable that he is this effective with such little in-game experience, considering where he's at in his career, and with all of the injuries that he sustained. He is so damn good.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous how great he is as a scorer. I think he's one of the best scorers in the league when you're looking at like just being unstoppable. There's nothing you can do that is going to stop me. He is the number 6 roll man in basketball with no minimums applied, 1.26 points per possession. He's the number 10 transition scorer in basketball, 1.31 points per possession. He's the number 14 scorer out of handoffs this season. He's the number 18 scorer out of pick and roll as a ball handler this season. And the guy averages over 10 free throw attempts per 36 minutes. I think Zion's an offensive number 1. The ability to get downhill and exert pressure on the rim the way he does, his ability to finish through contact. And, you know, Carson, you bring this up with Jokic and his whistle and how he doesn't get calls sometimes. I mean, Zion and a dude will collide where it's like a car crash at the rim.
Yeah.
Where a semi-truck is colliding with Godzilla.
Oh, I thought you were going to say with a toy car. I thought Zion was the semi-truck. I guess compared to a semi-truck, he is Godzilla.
Yeah, I mean, it's like... Well, I was thinking about him going up against other big men. It's so impressive, his ability to finish through that kind of contact. And it's also just so remarkable that he is willing to take that kind of physical toll on his body relentlessly every night to continue to get to those shots, because I know it takes a toll, but... that relentlessness, that ability to play make off of it, I already think he's an offensive monster. Defensively, he leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion, just with engagement and foot speed and stuff like that. I do think he's gotten better. He's in the best shape of his life. Like, if he was better as a shot maker, and that's really the only negative thing that I could say, as a shot maker or as a defender is what's limiting him from being higher on this list. But I'm not going to lie. Like, I considered Zion being in my top 10. Ultimately, those deficiencies are what holds him back. But I think Zion is one of the most special offensive players in the game today.
I might just say as a defender, like, does he need to be a better shot maker now that his touch in the paint is as good as it is, where he shoots 50% in the paint outside the restricted area?
Would you say kind of like Giannis, you just want to eliminate that completely from his game? I mean, I know Giannis is shooting the mid-range
now. It's just like, if you can give me 24 points per game in 28 minutes per game very efficiently, and all 24 of those points are coming in the paint or at the line, what else do I need out of you?
I guess,
give him the keys to your offense, make him your point guard, put shooting around him. He's bringing unprecedented rim pressure. He can make the reads to create for others. That's all I need. I'm not worried about anything outside the paint.
I was just going to say, the only reason I bring that up in this context is just because of, like, high leverage late game situations where you might need an over the top shot with little time on the shot clock. That is where I think it's important. But I mean, for the player he is, he's still super effective without one.
He is an offensive marvel. Per 36 minutes, averaging 31, 9, and 7 on 60% true shooting. Just let that sink in. I know we've talked about it before, but those are Giannis numbers that he is putting up offensively per minute. And that's in 29 games now. Like, this is a very legit sample size. And what he's done for the Pelicans offense when he's on the floor, like, I get it. They're not winning a lot of games. He is doing this with a very lackluster roster alongside him, to say the least. He's improved the offense by 8 points per 100 possessions when he's on the floor, and nobody has an answer for him, man. Like, it's not even a situation of, like, you can build a wall. I mean, teams load up on his drives and they still can't keep him away from the rim. He's too strong. He's too special, a leaper and a vertical athlete around the rim. He's still got such a quick first step. Like you said, I mean, there's just no other force like him coming downhill. The collisions are just like, holy shit. And Zion is built to dominate the paint in a way that really nobody else in the NBA right now is. And he's improved his touch. He's improved his playmaking. At his best, honestly, running pick and roll these days, I think you get him a step coming downhill and just nobody can do anything with him. But isolating, right? It's so difficult to deal with that combination of speed and power in vertical pop. As a post-up player, he's so strong, and the touch is legitimately really good. I compare him to everybody else in this range. I want his elite physical in position over everybody else. Like, Brunson has a high floor as a scorer, but you can see some really rangy, athletic, long wings who he can struggle to score over in isolation, and maybe they can provide some back pressure out of pick and roll and funnel him into a really good drop big. Like, I'm just thinking about some of the things that the Sixers did last year in the playoffs, where they were able to limit Brunson's efficiency in a few games. There's no counter for Zion. Like, he's just going to overwhelm you and create good shots for himself and others. And just look at that production and impact, man. I mean, like, that is top tier stuff. Now, defensively, he's not good, but I would say that he's been decent this year. He's been solid as a secondary rim protector. He's been more active with his hands, forcing steals and deflections. He's defended pretty well in isolation. Like, is he always going to be kind of a weird fit defensively? Yes, he is, because he's not going to guard on the perimeter a high level, but he's also like this 6'6" guy who can be a solid secondary rim protector, but not a super high impact guy there. Like, he's never been a good defender in the NBA. But if he can be decent there and he can be this dominant offensively, I don't know how you keep him out of the top 12. And, like, no, we don't have the playoff resume with him, unfortunately, obviously, because of health. The game that we saw from him in a playoff environment was the play-in last year, where he was absolutely dominant, even against a team that you feel like has a good combination of big, strong wings to deal with Zion. They couldn't do anything. The Lakers were helpless against him. I think he surpassed these other guys with his improved touch with his improved playmaking, and I got to have him in my top 12.
I'm wondering if we're going to...
I don't think we are.
We're going to keep rattling the same guys off.
I don't think we are, because I know how you feel about a certain someone who I have in my 11 spot, and I think you're going to have him higher. But who do you have in your 11 spot?
Do you have Wemby?
No, I don't have Wemby.
No! He left Ant out of the top 10!
Yeah. Sorry, buddy. You know what I've had to deal with? It's been a weird feeling throughout this list. You having all of my most beloved guys higher than I have them. I have Chet at number 24. I think that's high to have Chet. Most people have him lower. You have him 21. I have KP at 21. You have him at 19. I have Mobley at 15. You have him at 14. You're taking all my guys, buddy. But yes, I'm sorry. I do have your guy at number 11. It's your turn, though. Who do you have at number 11? Stop edging me in the viewers.
I got the guy that Anthony Edwards big dogged last year, Kevin Durant.
I knew you were
and put his nuts on KD's head. I will not elaborate further. You should not have Ant below KD.
I think that's a crazy thing to say. Because he put his nuts on his head? That's all you have to say.
He big dogged KD.
I'm not going to lie, man. KD was definitely not the problem for the Suns in that series last year. KD was the one dude who, in spite of just this defensive swarm and these crazy athletes bringing so much ball pressure, his shot making was just so stupidly good. He was still giving them a very efficient, like 28 a night. Timberwolves were a way better team. And Ant was awesome in that series. But like, that can't be your rationale. Your rationale is not last year's playoff series. That's
not my sole rationale. I wanted to get a little...
It can't be that Ant was fucking, hitting one of these.
He was, though. He did,
He was thrusting and talking shit and everything.
Yeah, I wanted to get a little bit inflammatory here, but... I mean, the difference to me right now at the point in their careers, I think KD is the better defender. KD might be a better playmaker. Similar at this point. I think Ant's actually improved as a playmaker this year. The big difference to me is just the rim pressure and the ability to actually fully get downhill and to do that. That's where I draw the line with KD and Ant. KD is a first percentile rim pressure at this point in his career. I believe just 14%, I believe, of his shots come at the rim, and 56% of his shots come out of the mid-range. That's an 100th percentile number. And so it has a lot to do with the shot diet. And granted, you can't really take KD's looks away because he can just shoot over the top of most defenses. But I do think you can frustrate him a little bit more than you can frustrate Ant. Like, Jaden McDaniels, I thought, gave KD fits. And, the Suns didn't have a guy that could match Ant on the other side. But I think that defender is so rare. Like, Ant is so explosive off the ball. He is one of the best jump shooters in the league now, which I said on the show I thought was coming for the past 2 years with how Ant practiced. Like, I thought he was going to get to this level. I'm so impressed that it's been sustained for this long. Like, with Anthony Edwards, I am getting one of the best downhill threats in the league. I'm also getting an elite pull-up jump shooter and one of the best three-point shooters in the game. And I just think he's a better number one than KD at this point in his career. And I think KD's lack of rim pressure is why I have him low. I get a veteran poise with KD for sure, a veteran presence. I mean, Ant's also my guy. I was never going to have Ant outside of the top 10. I don't think I could possibly do that, but I don't know, man. Ant's my guy. Do you hate Anthony Edwards or something? Like, I get he's number 11.
About?
Anytime we bring up Ant, I just feel like you're negative about Ant.
Bro, I am not. That's not true at all. Thinking that he is the 11th best basketball player on the planet. And by the way, I think that there are 11 top 10 caliber guys.
I was going to say, I think there's 12.
I wish I could have in my top 10.
If we're talking about Zion, too.
Yeah, Zion's great. I still think that Ant is a level above, and he has been phenomenal as of late. That sickens me that you would even say that, Logan, because I'm not the highest dude on Ant on the absolute planet.
But every time we bring up Ant,
because I feel like I'm just trying to bring you down to earth. I feel like that's my job.
Ant's going to be the GOAT, and I'm trying to let you know.
No, he's not. See, for example, no, he's not. He's not going to be the GOAT. He's not
Chat,
going to be better
clip
than
that.
Victor
We'll
Wembanyama.
revisit in 20 years. We'll revisit in 20 years.
We will, man. See, like, this is the thing. You put me in positions I don't want to be in. Ant's awesome. We're talking about Kevin Durant, and you're acting like it's disrespectful to think that KD is better than Anthony Edwards at this age. First of all, when you talk about the rim pressure with KD, is that a difference between 2025 KD and peak KD? Of course it is. It's a big difference. KD is better equipped to maintain elite production and efficiency while losing the elite rim pressure that he once had than any other scorer in NBA history. You know why? Because he's the greatest mid-range shooter we've ever seen in the history of this sport. Kevin Durant is shooting 55% from mid-range on high efficiency. That is not far behind what Anthony Edwards shoots at the rim. Like, it is absurd, the efficiency he is able to produce on those pull-up jumpers. He is also still one of the absolute best three-point shooters on the planet. He's 42% from deep. So, no, he's not getting to the rim a lot. Still gets to the line a good bit and is one of the absolute best jump shooters on the planet. Still clearly a better jump shooter than Ant because, although Ant is phenomenal from beyond the arc, Ant is still very much lacking in terms of intermediate shot making. He's an inefficient mid-range shooter. He's never developed the sort of floater game and runner that you would like to see from him. So, like, there could not be a bigger difference between these two in terms of what they shoot on two-pointers outside the restricted area, where KD is 55%, Anthony Edwards is 38% on twos outside the restricted area. And he takes too many of those shots still for my liking. So I feel like you're acting like there's not still a big efficiency gap between these two, which there is. KD gives you 26, 6, and 4 on 64% true shooting. There is still a big gap as off-ball scorers between these two. KD is one of the best off-ball scorers we have ever seen. KD has still been great in the playoffs over the last couple years. He's given you 28, 8, and 5 on 61% true shooting. Still a legitimately good rim protector, holding opposing players 7% below their average field goal percentage at the rim. KD is in every way still a superstar and a top 10 guy. His situation is just a complete disgrace. And as great as I think Ant is, as much as I think he has this unique combination of being an elite pull-up three-point shooter, 40% on insane volume, A-plus weapon, and his ability to attack and finish at the rim when he commits to it is an A-plus weapon, just with his rare combination of speed and strength and vertical ability at the rim, like we've seen him finish in traffic and do so at such an impressive rate. But, again, he's settling for more of those twos that are not at the rim than I would like to see, and I don't deny that situation is a part of that with the spacing that he's had to play within the minutes where you have Gobert out there on the floor, and he's more efficient when Gobert is not on the floor with him. And the other knock that I would still have on Ant is his playmaking. I think he has good moments there. I think there are spots where you see him diagnose the defense and be selfless. I think he's gotten better. He hasn't taken a leap, in my opinion. And part of that is, I think, lack of faith in teammates. Certain guys, especially Rudy Gobert, he does not like hitting off the roll. He does not like getting Rudy Gobert touches. And, like, that's something that a lot of great young players have to go through. Michael Jordan, we've heard this about him. Akeem Olajuwon. Like, these are dudes who were super gifted scorers and they didn't have the best offensive supporting cast. And, like, you have to learn to be consistently a willing passer of the ball, but it's something that all great offensive players have to be. And with Ant, there's just still too much inconsistency there. The playmaking isn't where it would need to be for him to be like the engine of a really good offense. And I think it's close between him and KD. I think Ant is a really good on-ball defender, but, like, KD's consistency, his ability to carve up any defense because he is such a mature superstar who's seen everything. Nobody can take away his shot making. I still value that. I still trust that more than Ant, who, again, has his A-plus traits, but still has a little more immaturity and a little more volatility with his offensive game. And off-ball stuff does matter, man. I mean, KD just will kill it anywhere.
Where I mean, I would never argue that Ant is better, but I also think that's an area where we've seen Anthony Edwards improve this year.
There's a big gap between him and Kevin Durant.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, KD is one of the best off-ball scorers of all time.
He is.
aura tax plus
Oh my God.
and 8 KD's lunch.
Dude,
And
KD
took
is
his
in
lunch
basketball
money.
hell.
And took his lunch money.
The KD situation is legitimately making me sad because I love Book so much too, and it's just breaking my heart that these two dudes have to play with these bums. KD, 84th percentile pick and roll creator, 94th percentile isolation creator, 86th percentile spot up player. Respect Kevin Durant, all-time great scorer.
That's why he's number 11. Anthony Edwards is unfortunately better than him right now. The silver lining is KD and Book are both going to get shipped out of town.
That is the silver lining.
So they can give Bradley Beal a $500 million extension with 7 no-trade clauses.
It bums me out that KD isn't going to get to dominate in the postseason and show you that his scoring is unaffectable and unassailable.
Oh, dear basketball gods, I pray to you that you relinquish Devin Booker and Kevin Durant from the shackles of the Phoenix Suns and provide to them a new home where they can harness their basketball powers and maximize them, hopefully, in a playoff context. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen to that. On that note, let's wrap this puppy up, baby. We've only got the top 10 left. Let's recount our numbers 20 through 11, though, Logan, to catch the people up real quick before we go. Would you do me the honors?
I could read. At number 20, I have Kyrie Irving. At 19, I have Kristaps Porzingis. At 18, I had Jimmy Butler. 17, Damian Lillard. 16, Devin Booker. 15, Donovan Mitchell. 14, Evan Mobley. 13, Jalen Brunson. 12, Zion Williamson. And 11, Kevin Durant.
You know, I really could cry seeing Evan Mobley that high. I feel like we were focused on having the Mobley versus Mitchell debate, and if I had to guess how people will react to seeing the graphic, they'll say Evan Mobley top 15, because I saw Pick a Side put out a clip the other day where they were taking Evan Mobley over a bunch of people he's better than, like Cat. Obviously, the defensive gap way exceeds the offensive gap. We're past that at this point, and people are like, that's crazy. I think people might have pushed back on Mobley over Sabonis. Like,
just scoring. It's really just scoring, I think.
If he played 36 minutes a game,
exactly.
I think people would be like, whoa, those are the numbers that he gives you. Cavs are just too damn good, man. He's the best regular season player on a team that's going to win 68 games probably. And the ceiling is the roof, man, for him and for Chet.
Let him know.
They're going to be top 10 at least. They're probably going to be top 5. We do this list in a couple years, and I'm just never going to stop glazing. I'm never going to stop glazing. I won't. They're my boys.
We don't want you to. That's what we do here at Nerd Sesh.
I mean, there just comes a point, Logan, where you fall so deeply in love with a couple of basketball players, you can't help but talk to them about everybody you encounter. Go to the dentist. I say, you see that Chet stat line the other day? Go to my therapist. I say, why do you think I think about Evan Mobley so much? What does it say about me? He says he's just incredible. I mean, he's the ideal modern big. Switches everything defensively, can handle for you offensively, can shoot, can attack mismatches.
Dude, let's get this guy on the pod.
He's a ball knower. He's a ball knower. It's me in the mirror. I'll get him on sometime. All right. Top 10 coming in next Monday.
Carson, you got to recap your list, my man.
I just got so excited thinking about Evan Mobley and Chet that I fully lost my mind. Okay. I have at number 20, Jaren Jackson Jr., number 19, Dame, number 18, Tyrese Haliburton, 17, Devin Booker, 16, Kawhi, 15, Evan Mobley, 14, Donovan Mitchell, 13, Jalen Brunson, 12, Zion Williamson, and 11, Anthony Edwards. We will wrap this list up on Monday, but we're going to take a break on Friday to have a guest on and do a very fun, very special show. So stay locked in for that. Follow us on YouTube. Listen to the podcast wherever you get your audio content, but on YouTube, you get all of our full episodes talking NBA and NFL, and you get all of our video essays and video breakdown content that we do specifically for YouTube. You can also follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh, and you can see all of our trivia content there, see clips from the show, graphics from the show. You can join our Discord if you want. That is linked at our Linktree, which is across our social media bios. And you can check out our merch at breakingtea.com. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.